Hey everyone, I'm Karen Walby-Solomon and welcome to What's IGN Crushing On, IGN Africa's official entertainment podcast. I'm your host and I'm joined as always by my producer and editor Rebecca Barches. So this is a show where we discuss all things entertainment and pop culture with a new guest every week. We bring recommendations, news and fun facts, sometimes touching on the more serious issues surrounding these topics. This week on the show, we were joined by Talya Goldberg. Talya is a creative director and strategist who has worked with many brands. She also runs a very popular newsletter, Curiously Curated. We spoke about the social dilemma, documentaries, and cults. But before we get to that, Rebecca, I don't know if you've been following South African news lately.
Little bit.
But there was huge drama at Tin Roof. Did you see this?
Oh my goodness. I only saw like a couple of headlines, but I don't actually know what happened. What happened?
Basically, like a whole lot of youngsters went to Tin Roof and I don't know if Tin Roof didn't adequately make sure that people were social distancing, but then again, it is a club. So I don't know. And obviously drinks are free and quite a few people got COVID, including a large number of matrics and a teacher. Whoa. I don't know if the teacher's like family of someone that got COVID or the teacher was at Tin Roof. Well, I'm gonna...
Yeah. Could have been either.
But yeah, so the students, the matrics that got COVID can only write in June next year. Which means like the whole year has been delayed. But
because of one night.
So I was actually, so I know you know, but like two of my nephews are in matric this year. So I spoke to the one who was like mysteriously out. So I was like, I hope you went to Tin Roof. And he's like, weirdly enough, my friend wanted to go there after the COVID outbreak. But the reason he didn't go wasn't because of COVID, it was because he didn't have a lift. Imagine putting yourself at risk like that for Tin Roof, not even for like a liquor club.
Okay, listen, it's a cool place. I've been there once.
I've been there a lot, and it's never...
Okay.
I've been there mostly like between the ages of 18 and like 20.
Okay.
And 20 is even a stretch, maybe like 18 and 19 and a half. But it was never like, you never went out to Tin Roof. It's like you'd go to like Claremont and then it would be one stop because it's like free to get in. You know, maybe they'll play a nice jam and like, the drinks were obviously cheap. I would never risk my life for it, like in the middle of a pandemic. In your matric year.
No, I fully understand that. And the whole effort of actually having to, get the makeup out, get the good outfit out, the whole sort of process of getting ready to go party, of all the places to choose from, why would you specifically go there? But maybe just because places have been closed for so long, you kind of like, you take whatever you can get kind of situation, and maybe that's why they chose to just take the risk.
But there's a lot of other places that are open now. I don't get it. It's like...
Also,
No, I'm just like... I don't understand, but like, I sort of maybe get, a once-in-a-lifetime type party situation, that like an event that's only happening once, then maybe risk your life. Maybe if it's a small place and nobody else, if you don't know if it's going to survive the pandemic, maybe risk your life for that. But, I mean, this... Tin Roof is like a cockroach, like when the world ends, Tin Roof is still going to be there. Once your exams are over, Tin Roof is still going to be there.
Yeah.
So, go by your friend's house. I'm sorry. Put on a Spotify playlist. Invite the boy you like over. You know what I mean? You always have that one friend whose parents are kind of cool. So
and there's a house to party
at. There's a house to party at. Don't go to this... do you remember how sticky the floor was?
Oh my gosh.
I was trying to explain this to my nephews, like horror stories. I was like, there was always a layer of alcohol and glass on the floor. But there would still be people dancing barefoot.
Personally, I don't remember barefoot dances because I think that was past a certain hour that I allowed myself to be over there. But like barefoot dancing, what I find the most interesting about this is that you referred to these people as youngsters,
Mm.
right? And they are not that much younger than we are. I don't know. That's what I find interesting.
But then again, you think of all the stupid like decisions you made 10 years ago.
Fair enough. But I don't think I would have made such a stupid decision 10
Me
years
neither.
ago.
Me neither.
Like, yeah, fair point.
Okay.
Case closed. Bunch of dum-dums.
Okay, but it also like it made me think the things we do for the gram, man. Like I can imagine how how they like going out tonight. And I must say, like ever since I had this interview with Talya, and she was talking about like doing things for the gram and like the effects of social media on children, on adults, and everyone.
Yeah.
Like it has made me think about things we agree to do, things we don't agree to do.
Yeah.
And like what we show of ourselves on social media. I really enjoyed this interview. Like she is a very interesting person to talk to, and she knows a lot about the industry and also like about things, man. Like the girl is read, she has listened to podcasts, she has watched them, she knows. But
I loved how towards the end she just couldn't stop telling you. Like she got to the point where she had so many recommendations where she was just like, probably time.
I did
call it quits.
It was so easy talking to her, and I think I've had this problem with quite a few episodes. But like,
I think that's such a good thing.
Where I got so like into the conversation, and I'm like, I have to be watching the time, or else we'll be talking forever. Like I knew I could probably go on for another 2 hours, and I'll be like, oh no, we have to stop. So it was like, I mean, we got to the point where it's like an hour in, and we only just got to her recommendations of what you should watch.
Yeah, but that whole hour long of conversation was, at least for me while I was editing, was super interesting. Like, as you were saying, especially about social media and why we should just sort of be more cognizant of what we're doing on it and how much time we spend tweeting and Instagramming and stuff like that. And what the purpose is, like why are we doing it? And the link to mental health. Generally, no one shares something of like, hey, I just had a week of staying in bed and being depressed. Because, like 90% of the time, it's like, hey, I just got a new cute puppy. And that's one of the things I'm most jealous about. when people brag about their new puppies. Like, okay, cool, you got a nice car, yay, baby, yay, engaged. But when a puppy shows up, I'm like, oh, that's the life.
Also, on that note, let's get into our interview with Talya. So how have you been? Like, have you been keeping busy during quarantine and lockdown and COVID and all these things?
I've been good. I've been keeping myself busy and occupied. Obviously, it's been really weird, and it kind of feels like a fever dream almost when I realized it was October, because it felt like end of March, like 26th of March, lockdown started, and I've been working, relaxing a little bit, and like I looked up and it's like October, and like there are Christmas decorations in stores, and it's like 2020 is gone. Like this year is like October, November. Then we're on the beach in December, and like the year is gone, and I really don't feel like I've accomplished all that much. And it's just been like one of the strangest years, obviously. And I think that we're going to look back on in like 10, 15 years and be like, remember 2020?
Like barely.
Like barely. Like it was just like honest. Like it's honestly like it's just the strangest year of all time, and obviously everyone's had that experience. How everything has changed and shifted, and like we're used to wearing masks to go out now and like sanitize our hands and wash our hands and try not to touch our face, although I'd like have realized I touch my face all day. I did not know that I did that until I was told you can't touch your face, and I was like, I literally, that's all I do all day.
That's so true. I was quite nervous to chat to you because you're like, I think you're you're like this like you're so well known in the industry. And I know you're always on these like really serious businessy type podcasts, and I'm here with my like crazy talk a lot of nonsense thing. But
That's not true about me being necessarily well known. And I have been on a few other podcasts, but I have listened to your podcast and I love it. And to be honest, like the subjects that you talk about are exactly what I love listening to and talking about. So I was like really honored that you asked me to be on your podcast.
But like, I'm very interested to know, how did you get into like digital strategy? Because you almost like a pioneer in that industry. And I mean, I know there's a lot of people that do it, but I mean, not as like as famously as you do.
How did I get into it? I think, well, I was studying at UCT, and I was studying marketing at UCT. I wanted to study fashion, and anyway, I got into UCT. My parents were like, "Oh, you should apply and do like a serious degree, and then you can do something creative afterwards." Because I was always very creative, and I never got to do the creative thing afterwards. But anyway,
You can still do it.
I know. I like still do it on the side, but like I always wanted to study art or fashion, and that did not happen for me. But I went to UCT, and I didn't realize at the time that I thought, oh, I'm doing a marketing course. Didn't realize the beginning part of that degree said business science, and it was going to be all economics, stats, finance, accounting, game theory. Like there was almost no marketing in the course. It actually blew my mind. Like when I finished stats 1, I was like, oh, I'm done with stats forever now. And they were like, oh no, there's stats 2. And then after stats 2, I was like, oh, we're done with stats forever. They're like, no, there's stats 3. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I hate this. But a very fortunate thing that did come out of me being at UCT was one of my lecturers with this like very random subject was called, I just forgot what the name of the subject was, but he was basically talking about Web 2.0. That's like literally what social media was called at the time, and this was like 2008, and he was talking about Twitter, and he like pulled up a screen of Twitter, and there was this blue bird, and people were tweeting about like what they had for breakfast, and like it was just so bizarre, and I was like, this sounds amazing. So I signed up. I mean, I had been on MySpace. I loved MySpace. Signed up to Facebook quite early, enjoyed it, but like I never thought it was as great as MySpace. And then I got on Twitter, and I was probably like one of like the first few South Africans on it, and I think I realized quite early on in marketing and so what I was studying, like that these new things like Facebook and Twitter and using them for your brand was like an amazing way to like market yourself, because no one else was really doing it at the time. So I interned for that lecturer for a while. I did like quite a lot of internships while I was at UCT. I did another internship for a month at an agency called Stonewall, which has become Native. And the guy I was supposed to intern with, he landed up actually resigning, and they basically gave me his job. Because at the time when you went to work at a digital agency, that meant they were building websites, and like a really cool website was a Flash website, which would not work anymore because no one downloads Flash. So basically that's what they did. They did graphic design for all these websites and these mobile sites, and that was so cool. And there was literally one guy doing social media, and they ended up giving me most of his job. And then after my month was up and I was going back to UCT, they were like, we haven't found anyone to replace him yet. Well, can we pay you to continue to do this in your spare time? So I landed up. I know, that was like literally my first paid job that literally came off this 1 month of working for free at this agency, and it was so great. And it was like working on a lot of alcohol brands, and I was basically just sitting and tweeting. Like it was really bizarre. And at the same time, I had also kind of started a blog, which kind of got a little bit of traction. And through that, I landed up meeting the brand manager we did from Sunglass Hut, and we met and chatted. And she was one of I thought one of the first people in South Africa from the brand side who really understood like the power of influencers and social media and Twitter. And she basically said to me, look, we don't have anyone here who understands Twitter or digital marketing. Would you tweet for Sunglass Hut? And I was like, yeah, sure. So like I set up the Sunglass Hut essay, I set up their Twitter, and I used to tweet for them. And that was one of the jobs I had for a while. And then also I landed up at one point I was doing like the Mr. Delivery social media when they rebranded, and so like I got in very early when I was at UCT and could like really afford, like
Mm-hmm.
I say afford to work like that, but the truth was I was earning a lot of money, but the problem was I was sort of failing courses at UCT. And I was very lucky that my parents paid for me to do this amazing degree, but if I failed the course, they made me pay to
Mm.
redo the course. And I very quickly realized how expensive these courses were when I was earning money and then had to spend like almost all of it to like redo like stupid courses. And because like for some reason I always landed up with Mr. Delivery, they'd be sending out this promo to like 30,000 people email newsletter, and like the social media would blow up immediately afterwards. And that was always the day that I'd like left to study for a stats test from 3 to 5, and that's the time I
Gosh.
needed to be there. Like,
Oh my
and
gosh.
and like it's just so different, like how social media was then and now, and I've just like really enjoyed. So that's kind of how I got into it, and then I had my own brand for a while, and I blogged, and I've just like always loved social media and like the amazing things that can come out of it. I mean, I think that to a large extent it has become quite negative, but I still see the positive of it. And I think just like the most amazing thing is that it is free and that you can connect with the most amazing people because of it, and you can just learn so much from it and just have so much fun on it, like if you structure it correctly.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I was talking to somebody recently and they were like talking about the toxicness of Twitter. And I was like, Twitter is the place that I've not only met, but I've just heard voices that I know I would never have heard of. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even think I knew anyone from the Northern Cape before Twitter. Like, even like locally, like not even internationally. Like, that's how social media is. You can
I mean, social media is amazing. Twitter is amazing. I would delete every single social media thing tomorrow and keep Twitter. Like, if you force me tomorrow that I must delete Facebook, Instagram, I could, like, you could take it now. Like, I literally would not care. But like, Twitter is the one that I would like really fight you because I find I get so much value out of it. And it's not just relationships with people you meet or you see. Every I get all my news, all my information, and I think that people do find it to be a toxic place when you don't really get it, and also when you don't use the block function. Like the block function is there for a reason, so is mute. And I do think there is a problem where this echo chamber and the rabbit hole where people only follow people who have the same opinion as them. And I don't think that's what we should be doing. I like actively follow people whose opinion I don't necessarily agree with, because I think it gives you better arguments of being able to understand different sides of an issue. But like, there are also people who are racist, homophobic, and just horrible, toxic people that you don't need on your feed, and that you can just block them.
It's so true. It's like, you know, they always say like you can't like cut out people, you know, that you don't agree with. But the problem is if the reason you don't agree with them is because they undermine other people's human rights, so that's another issue, and that's a good enough reason to keep them out of your space. But I mean, somebody who just like who likes it, like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a less serious issue.
Swifties.
Yeah, likes. Yeah, somebody who likes a singer that you don't like. I mean, or music type that you don't. That's silly, you know. Let people.
Yeah, just use the word Taylor Swift if you really find it so offensive. It's not that hard.
So, what would you say has been like your highlights of your career this far?
The highlight of my career. Oh, I don't know if I have a particular highlight. I think I've done lots of work that I'm really proud of, and that I've enjoyed, and I started putting it together on an Instagram account so that I have a portfolio, because I think a lot of the time people don't know what I do at all. And I think everything that I did with Nifty, Nifty 250 back in the day, I'm just really proud of the fact that that came from pretty much my imagination and my partner Lucas, and that we really built something that people really responded to and resonated with, and that I do see a lot of what comes through has. I do see oftentimes brands took some inspiration from it.
Yeah.
You can use the word inspiration. But I don't know, there's no, that was like those kind of things, and not even career highlights, but just like the connections I've made, people I've met, and the opportunities I've gotten. I feel like really blessed at how many people have taken so many chances on me. When I don't know what, like, I don't know if they had self belief or they saw my self belief or they just, I don't know what it was, but like so many people gave me so many chances when I didn't necessarily have a track record to prove that I should be like the head of digital marketing for this, or I should be the creative director of that. I didn't have any other than I could talk the talk, and I felt like I knew what was the right thing to do. But I was extremely young, and the fact that they gave me those opportunities, I'm just really grateful that I got them, and then I kind of just did them, and I just ran with it, because I've always had this thing. It's like, you get thrown in the deep end, you're either going to sink or swim, and I'm not going to sink. So I'm going to figure this out. I mean, there's Google.
I was thinking, as you were talking about Nifty, like, well, when you still had the brand, I'd gotten like a voucher as a gift, and an entire wall of my childhood bedroom was like pictures that I'd printed. And I'm like, you actually created like a design style in people's homes.
I like, honestly, that's like my best thing in the whole world. Like when I would go to someone's office, or I like made a new, like I met someone or a friend of a friend, I would go to their house and I would look at the fridge and there was a Nifty prints. Like that just like honestly was one of those things that like, I don't want to say like filled me with pride, but like it was really, really cool to see, because no one at the time was doing that style with the Polaroid. So like I knew it was Nifty. And like even the creamery, like we had a trade exchange with them where like they would give us ice cream in exchange for prints, and like the amount of times I would go into the store and see people taking pictures of the pictures, which is so amazing.
What would be your ideal brand to work with, like dream brand? Anybody?
My dream brand in South Africa for a very long time has been Discam.
Oh wow.
I mean, this game is just, I am obsessed with this game. I spend way too much money in there. I think everyone knows, like, you go to this game for one thing and you come out with 40. It's just, the prices are unbelievable. The stock is unbelievable. I think it's, I don't want to be rude about them, but I think it's terribly merchandised. There's not a good experience. Like some of the areas you go into, and it looks like they just threw things on a shelf.
Yeah.
And you just like, how? And some of the things are so random. You're just like, how did this land up in the store? Like especially like the bins as you like walking through the aisle, to pay. Like there's some random shit there, like random. But I've always been into like vegan and gluten free and sugar free. Like even though I'm not in like the healthiest space right now. And I used to be like obsessed with Wellness Warehouse, and I love Faithful to Nature. But even Discam, like their health aisle, like they have some really cool stuff. And I love looking at the packaging and the different products. And even their vitamin section, I just love, and like the beauty section, and they have lots of vegan, cruelty-free shampoos and conditioners. And I just love going to see what they have. And I just think like from their branding perspective, like they could just do such a better job than they're doing. Like I haven't had a TV in probably like 8 or 9 years. So I haven't seen ads in a very long time. But when like Cyril was doing the speeches for coronavirus, I was kind of streaming it on Showmax, and I was like SABC3, I think. And like there were some Discam ads in between, and I was like, wow, like is this it? Like it just could have been so much better. Like I think there's such great products. Like the prices are amazing. I don't know if you've ever looked at the Instagram, but like it really like,
no, I didn't even know they had one.
Yeah, it's very upsetting. Because like if you go and Google, like this game is owned by two very old married couple, as far as I know, in Johannesburg. Who've had it for 1 million years, and like their revenue is in the billions, their profit is in the billions, and it's like, we could do something so fun here. And then like my second South African brand, if I can't get this scammer, would probably be Clicks. Free the Tresemme hair saga. Just because like someone, I need to go there and I just want to go into a Clicks boardroom and I just want someone to explain to me why their logo is a unicorn. Like, where did the unicorn come from? I just want to get a backstory because I've Googled it. I've read on their website. Like, I've never found an explanation that would explain like how they came up with it. Like, it makes no sense. Like, they're a pharmacy. Why is it a unicorn?
I don't even
like,
looked at the. I didn't even realize.
But that's the thing. Like, whenever I tell people it's a unicorn, people are like, "What are you talking about?" Like, I never thought that it's a unicorn, but it really is a unicorn. It's not like a horse like Ferrari. It's a proper unicorn.
Is Clicks also a South African band?
Clicks is a South African brand, as far as I know. And then, like, internationally, my top 3 brands, if like I'm dreaming in the whole world, would obviously be Apple, would be the one. And I'm like, Nike is my greatest obsession. I just think that everything they do is just perfect. Like, from the branding to the merchandise to the advertising to the people that sponsor. I think it's really interesting their influencer strategies, that they basically don't work with influencers at all, and they only really work with athletes and like DJs and people who are like quite fashionable or in the fashion set, but like for a very, very long time they have not worked with influencers. It's kind of started to change lately, whereas like I found Adidas is really going very full onto the influencers. But Nike is just my absolute dream. I think between Just Do It and that tick, that swoosh, I mean, like, it's just perfect. It's just like there are no brands that are that perfect. And then like the third one that I'm really, really obsessed with is Louis Vuitton, just because there's a documentary called Louis Vuitton and Marc Jacobs, and you kind of see him go behind the scenes at Louis Vuitton, and the head office is in Paris, and then his office in Marc Jacobs in New York when he was working there. And it just looks like the most fantastic place because like budget is not a thing. And like anything artistic, any crazy idea you have all these amazing artists, designers, embroidery, silk specialists. They come in and it's not fashion, it's art. It's like what they present on the runway for these things are pieces of art made by like these people who have these crafts that have been passed down in French families for like hundreds of years, and everything is so beautiful. I think it's such a change from like fast fashion, which is not ethically made and it's not made to last in any way, and it's not really, I mean, obviously it's not art, it's clothing. So those are like the 3 brands that I'm like really like the most pretty much inspired by.
I can see it. So I wanted to talk about the social dilemma.
Yeah.
Like, I honestly think that there's nobody better to talk about it than you. But so first one was like, why do you think this documentary like shook so many people? Like, obviously we've been talking about algorithms and social media and those kind of things, but after this documentary I've never heard like so many like normal people talking about how much social media affects your daily life. So why do you think it had that effect?
Well, were you shocked by it?
No, I don't think I was really that shocked.
Yeah, that's how I felt. I was more shocked that other people were that shocked because I wasn't shocked. But I also do know that like all the topics discussed in the film are things that I'm fascinated by and I read a lot about. So there was nothing in that film that was new to me at all. But I do think, look, I do kind of have a problem with all documentaries at the moment. I think they just all extremely, extremely biased. Whether it's a documentary about Western medicine and big pharma, or whether it's about a vegan diet or fast food or fast fashion, I think they are all incredibly biased to the point that they want to sell you on,
Yeah.
whether they want you to stop buying fast fashion, whether they think that you should 100% eat vegan. I think that these documentaries have like no real middle ground, and I think that they really are trying to shock you. I can't see what they were trying to get out of the social dilemma other than getting people to delete social media, which is not going to happen because I think, as they illustrated quite well, people are addicted to it. But I think that a lot of people, I guess, have not been reading up about this, and I think that they can see the effect that they're on their phones a lot, and it's the first thing they look at when they wake up, and it's the last thing that they look at before they go to sleep. But I don't think they realized how engineered that was.
Yeah.
Like how engineered that they send you an email when you've been tagged in a photo, or your notifications come up, and those little things that keep you coming back and hooked on it. I think that people didn't realize it was that much, and I don't think in the film that they necessarily explained polarization all that well. I think they could have done a better job of that. I don't know if you listened to the podcast Rabbit Hole by the New York Times.
No.
But it's really, really excellent, and it talks about this guy who basically watches his white American, kind of dropped out of college, maybe 21, 22, goes back to his hometown, takes a job kind of packing boxes, nothing too amazing. It's kind of like a little bit of a failure is his feeling. And he starts watching YouTube videos, and I think a lot of people didn't realize like kind of the YouTube algorithm and how they changed the algorithm, where they changed it so that you would watch for longer and you would stay on their website for longer. So how do you get someone to stay on a website for longer and not leave and be like, oh, I could go watch TV, or I could go for a walk, or I could do anything other than watch YouTube? And it was like, we're going to give you more and more insane content. So they were no longer showing you, they were really radicalizing people with this content that people really shouldn't have been seeing. Yet that was the content that was coming up. And I mean, I realized it a long time ago on my YouTube that I was getting recommended the craziest things. It wasn't like another makeup tutorial or another architectural digest home tour. It was like, I don't even want to try and make up a name for what I was seeing, but it was like, it was all sordid or murder or incest or affairs, and like it was, everything was like, it wanted you to click on it and it wanted you to watch it. So I think for me, because I'm on social media and I work on it and I work on the brand side and I do have my own personal social media, I think that I'm very much aware of what's happening, and I try to consume content mindfully, and I try to create content mindfully. So I'm very aware of how all of these things work, where I think a lot of other people, it's a little bit, I don't want to say it's mindless, but they aren't looking so much at how the system is working. And I think when it's kind of put into an hour and a half film like this, and people see just the effects that it's having, if I was a parent of like really young kids who were getting a phone, I would honestly be terrified.
Yeah.
Because like I think about me having, I mean, I had MySpace when I was in matric and then first year, and we would take pictures on our little point and shoot like pink camera, and then I would go and I would
I had
be
the same one.
and it was the best, and it was the best. But I would get home when I was drunk, and that was all cool. And then I would wake up in the morning, open the camera, put it on the computer, choose 40 of the best photos, not one, 40, and make a Facebook album out of it. But like I only had, I don't know how many friends. It wasn't like thousands of people.
Yeah.
And I think the thing now is being able to go live. And they show that in the one episode of Rabbit Hole, and they talk about like that New Zealand shooter, and it's terrifying. Like, it's not even going live and being like, oh, let me and you have a chat. Like, it's terrifying what can go on live. And that when you're 16, 17, and you're making these like really stupid decisions, and maybe you're drunk or you're high or whatever the situation is, and you go on live and you say or do some stuff that you would really regret. I don't think that people at 16, 17, you don't realize that what you say and do can be taken out of context, and once it's on the internet, it's there forever, and you can't erase it. And I think people are going to have such big problems with employment and work when everything is Googleable now.
Yeah.
Like, that stuff didn't exist when I was needing to go get my first job. Now, if an employer wants to hire me, they can search me and they can find stuff. But I don't think that when you're a teenager, you're that aware of thinking about the future.
Mm.
So I think we went very off topic. Yeah.
No, but it's so true. I was also thinking now, I was like, oh my gosh, I used to upload those like thunder.com pictures, but if it was ugly, it's fine. I'm not downloading that ugly one. Only if it looked like it's really good.
I mean, that, and also, I don't know if you ever were a runner or have ever done runs, but like, they sometimes take pictures of you, and then after the run, you can go and you search like your badge number, and you're like, oh, that's a hideous photo. Definitely not downloading that one.
But I think for me also, the part that I don't know about scared me, but I'm not a mom or anything, but how it affects children, like the part of the documentary with like the stage part where the girl was like trying to knock open the thing because she wanted to get hold of her phone.
Yeah.
Or like the boy watching the videos. I mean, I have a nephew who's about 13 who's obsessed with YouTube. And I do while I'm like, what's going to happen? Like, I don't know what he watches. I mean, I'm not his parent, so it's not really my responsibility. But I mean, I don't know what he watches, but also you don't know what route that might take. But then again, I'm also like, but I also don't want to look long for videos, Talya. I want my I like the fact that if they suggest videos that are like similar to something I'm watching and I want to watch more, it's easier than going to go search. So in that way, I sort of understand the algorithm.
Yes. I mean, so I think that was also, those things were scary. I think the other very scary thing in the social dilemma was the girl not being happy with her appearance.
Yeah.
And I think that we had like those filters on Instagram are a fuck up. Like those filters on Instagram, the fact that I can put it in front of my face and look flawless. I mean, I'm not even talking about Facetune that I must go take a non-flawless photo of myself and Facetune the shit out of it. I'm talking, I just literally put it over my face and everything. Like my eyes are brighter, my eyes are bigger, my nose is smaller. Like I look like beyond the best version of me that like do not have the money for plastic surgery or skincare to afford. Like I will never look like that. And I think I realistically understand body image and all of that, but for people who are much younger and are much more affected by that, it is terrifying that you can maybe only look at yourself through a filter and you don't then like what you see in the reflection in the mirror because you want to look like the filtered version of you. And I mean, I also, if you think about Instagram, I think makeup is amazing, but I do think to a point, I don't know if you've noticed, I feel like, and there was a big article in the New Yorker about it, but like Instagram face, where everyone kind of wants face, like people have contoured their faces to all look the same. Like you'll see a picture of people and they're all friends and somehow they all have the same face. Their face, but like with makeup, I mean, when they don't have makeup, they look like individuals. Yeah. And then when they have makeup, they have the same eyebrow, the same contour, the same color lips. It's kind of creepy to me, like that's the aspiration, is to kind of all blur into one person.
It's wild. I mean, but
wild.
Do you see things changing?
No. I can't see it changing in any way. I think that they've let Facebook get way too big. Facebook is now not just Facebook. It's also WhatsApp. It's Instagram. Yeah. It's making extremely good money. The American government can't rein it in. I mean, maybe in the EU setting and the UK are setting some good laws around social media. But, I mean, there was an insane case in South Africa with a girl being stalked via Facebook and stuff. And I don't think that her parents got any help from Facebook helping her in the situation. And I think that we can understand that if there are a billion people on Facebook, and even if Facebook has 30, 40, 50, 60,000 moderators, they're never going to be able to actually moderate content from a billion people. Like, how would that work? And I don't think it's in their invested interest to change their algorithm to make you less addicted to it, because then that just drives down their revenue, because they only get revenue if they're ads, and they're only going to be ads if people are on it. So I don't know how it can change other than people actively seeing how negatively it can affect you, but also how the positives that you can get out of social media, and then really understanding that it's an addictive thing and that you will want to use it more, but you almost need an app to like, and I mean, they do exist with the timers that you should only be on social media an hour and all of those, and that's all good, but realistically I think everyone clicks past it, ignore, like they want to be on Instagram. And I don't know, I personally know that the happier I am, the less I'm on social media. And the more unhappy I am, like when I'm not in a good space and I could be on my phone all day and I'm searching and I'm doomsday scrolling and I'm watching everyone else's so-called perfect lives. And it's making me less and less happy. And like when I'm really at my happiest, I'm out, I'm seeing my friends, I'm going for coffee, I'm busy, I'm taking a couple of pictures, which I post later. But I definitely, for myself, see the correlation between being happy and being on social media less, and then being mindful, like, well, I'm a grown adult, and I know that this affects me negatively. But I've just recently moved into a new flat that has a bath, which is like the best thing ever. And I've literally been leaving my phone on silent in another room and going and having a bath for like an hour and reading my book. And it's just so wonderful to not be on my phone all the time, because I do so much work on my phone also throughout the day. And just to get like an hour, because I've also found my attention span for reading books is decreased immensely. I used to be able to like devour a book. I used to be able to just take a book and like I would be done in a day or two. I couldn't stop reading. But then I never had a phone that was beeping at me constantly, or I never had Twitter to check, and I never had Instagram to check, and I didn't have all these, like, it's just crazy how many more distractions we have now. And I don't think it's necessary for the better.
No, I'm the same. Like I'm a heavy reader. I always have been. But right now, especially during like this time, I've had to like set aside time to read. Like I have to like specifically make sure my phone is in a different room. This is my reading time, or else I will not read. Because everyone's like, how are you finishing book? How are you finishing books? And like I'm like, I can't not. Because you also have to realize that like when you start a book, it's not necessarily gripping in the beginning. You have to stick with it for a little bit.
Yeah.
And before, we'll get a bit bored, or I wouldn't understand or something like that, and I would immediately reach for my phone. But like I have to stop myself from doing that. But like, do you think that the pandemic made people more dependent on social media? Because my screen time has been like wild. I can't.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it has, and I think between all social media and then throwing in Zoom, I think that for people who are like our age or who had a job before, going to the office, or whether you're a freelancer and you worked at a co-working space, or you just went and sat at a coffee shop, however you worked, you did have some form of like human communication. And I think that's the most important thing, where the Zoom thing is so weird and it's breaking up, and it's the whole thing feels so awkward and you feel so isolated. I just remember, I don't know if you remember, but like right at the beginning of lockdown, when it just started happening, all these celebrities and stuff and brands were doing lives, and like a live with John Legend, and do this and do that and do this live gym class, because I felt like people like really wanted the sense of connection, that they were doing something with other people at the same time, because really they were just at home doing nothing. And it, like, I think like when it was that stage 5 lockdown, I mean, that was extremely hard. And it's not like South Africans had like a ton of time to prepare that they could go and buy arts and crafts or books, and like e-commerce was closed. Like you couldn't like when I think about that, it's just so crazy. Like if you didn't have a good book at home, you couldn't read a good book. Like unless Pick and Pay or Woolworths was selling like one or a magazine. You literally had to make do with what you had. And I think that must have been extremely difficult for people with teenagers or young kids to like keep them occupied for that amount of time. And I think often the easiest thing is to just throw a phone or throw a tablet, and whether it's YouTube or Netflix or playing a game, and I also think I can't imagine right now having to have a job and have kids and homeschool them, and I also just don't understand how like people were like affording to buy another laptop or computers for these kids who also needed to be online, and the amount of internet. And in terms of South Africa and like inequality, like I just don't understand. Like I feel like so many kids are gonna have been left behind by this, because we don't have like I'm struggling with my internet now, and I can afford good internet. And I have a MacBook, and my Zoom still freezes. So I have the best setup possible, like, and it's not necessarily working.
So how important do you think it is to take breaks from social media?
I think it's like the most important thing ever. I think it's so important. So what I've been trying to do for a couple of months now is I try to have like one day on the weekend where I just don't go on my phone at all. And I've been meaning to buy it, and I haven't actually bought it. It's just like a very old school Nokia. They sell them PEP, and I think it costs like 280 Rand. And it's got like 12 buttons. It even has a color screen. And I'm just gonna like be using that on the weekend so that like I can text, that I can make a phone call. Because I think giving yourself that break, because I think we don't realize that we almost have Stockholm syndrome to the social media. Like we love it and we think it's so great for us, but when you're not on it, you're like, well, life is so wonderful. I just think being present and being around people. I mean, I went for breakfast with someone I hadn't seen in a while recently, and she sat on her phone for most of the time. And firstly, I think it's just really disrespectful. And I mean, I was like, we're having breakfast. Like, why are you on? Like, I just find it rude, and I try not to do it. Like, I know that I can be on my phone, and I always like taking a picture of my food or my coffee, but then I always try to turn it over, put it down on the table, and then like really be present with the person who's there. But people really are addicted to it, and I think it really sucks for the other people who are in that situation when you do feel like you're being ignored by someone who's supposedly in the room with you. And it's like we could have hung out the entire day and like been together, but like if one of us or both of us were on the phone the whole time, like it wasn't really quality time. Because you're like so engrossed in this whole other world that's happening. But I think that people don't have necessarily perspective that like what's happening now is real life, not what's happening in the phone.
That's so true. Like after level 1, getting to see people again. I went out with a few friends, and I was like, I didn't even take any photos. Like nobody knows I was with them. And then I go on Instagram and I see all these other people going out and they pictures, and I'm like, I look like I have no life. But then I was like, but I also had the best day ever.
Yes.
Like nobody else needs to know about the good day I had other than me and the people I was with.
I think that's sometimes almost like a self-esteem thing, that like you don't necessarily feel like I often find I feel like it's true in like relationships. I sometimes find the people who post the most about their relationships are often the most unhappy, and it's kind of like self-validate their relationship and the existence, like, oh, I really love you, and behind the scenes it's terrible. And then I think kind of sometimes feel like it's the same with social media. It's kind of like they're not necessarily in a good space, so everything feels like quite braggy. But sometimes when the person's not on social media at all, it's like they're having the best time ever, and you're just too, like, I know when I'm having the best time ever, I'm too busy to be social mediaing, to take pictures, because I just want to be with the people that I'm with.
No, okay, that's such a healthier way to look at it. Not that I'm a loser. Looks like I'm not going anyway. Okay. Okay, talking about Instagram, like I am,
Yes.
okay, this is just, I'm really Instagram stupid. So I'm just gonna, I feel like people will knock me if I don't ask you this, but talking about influencers. So I must say, like, I must admit, offhand, I am terrible with influencers. Before I worked at Cosmo, I had no idea who was who. And
Yeah.
and then I had to get like a crash course really quickly. And now I've got a better idea. But
Yeah.
so how do you think that the influencer landscape is going? Where do you think it's going to go in South Africa? Because I mean, it feels like there's just so many. I mean, really, like someone who's coming to it late to keep up with everybody, and like,
Yeah.
but I do feel like I'm influenced by people on social media. And I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
always in a negative light, in a positive way too. There's so many great things that I've learned, so many products that I bought that I've really loved, that I've seen on like social media, on Twitter, on Instagram.
You
And
buy an air fryer.
yeah, very close, very close. My mom has been nagging for an air fryer. So yeah, I think that's going to happen soon.
Or a one pot. Instant pot, not one pot, instant pot. I think so I think there are some very interesting things happening in the influencer space. I've definitely noticed in the last 2 to 3 months that a lot of the brands I was working with at the beginning of the year completely paused in March. Like marketing budgets were like, woo, like we don't even know if we're going to be able to pay our staff. We're not spending this money into marketing. I have noticed within the last 3 months, I can see that the brands are going hard on influencers and are spending a lot of money, which makes me really happy because one of the biggest problems for me with influencer marketing for a very long time has been the lack of kind of transparency around paying, and for a very long time it was very much seen as almost like a trade exchange. Like this brand, the brand will always approach the person and say, oh, we're doing a collab, and I'm like, what is your version of a collab? Oh, we'll give you free products and you'll post about it. I'm like, that's not really a collaboration in any way. So it is very nice the brands are currently have started to pay for content. I think that gives the industry, it makes it a lot more viable, because I think a lot of people wanted to be influencers because they see other influencers' content and think, and they aspire to that lifestyle. And a lot of younger and teenagers, like they all want to be YouTubers and are inspired by these YouTubers who share their insane houses and their cars. And the reality of it is that you have as much chance of becoming a successful influencer or a successful YouTuber as you have becoming like the next Serena Williams or Tiger Woods. Like there really are only a few people in every industry, whether it's tennis, whether it's golf, whether it's art, whether it's music, or if you look at how many musicians make millions and millions of dollars, like it's always going to be a handful of people. And the thing that my problem with the influencers for a very long time is that people saw influencers, and often they came from very affluent families or from wealthy families, and there was other money behind that. And I think people thought, oh, they're making so much money being an influencer, and they're going on this amazing trip, and they're getting this and that. And I'm looking from the perspective that that trip was free, or that was a family holiday, or that clothing brand gave them a lot of free stuff. Also, back in the day, people used to go to places like Country Road and Witchery and wear the stuff and then return it. We won't talk about that. Yeah, no, that kind of stuff happened. And taking pictures of it, and it was very much me selling like this false kind of lifestyle that wasn't. And then a whole lot of other people got into it because everyone wanted that lifestyle, and they wanted these sunglasses and this trip and this car and to have this much money. And that's kind of a problem. And the other thing that I find kind of very strange and interesting about the influencer space in South Africa is a lot of the content is about, yay, I got a brand deal. Like, oh my God, thank you guys so much for your support. This brand is like, I'm working with this brand, and this brand is finally paying me and all of this. And it's so weird because if you think about influencers in America or the UK or Australia that I follow a lot in Europe, none of them are ever talking about, oh yeah, I just booked a campaign, even if it's to be like the face of Lancome or whatever. They just post the content because that's seen as a job. But in South Africa, it's been so backwards for such a long time in terms of no one has gotten paid, or the people who've got paid has literally been about 10 to 20 people who have been making really good money, while the rest of the people have very much still had a 9 to 5 job or a freelance job or some other side hustle. I've not been able to like necessarily make it a viable business. And I think that a lot of people thought for a long time that this was a viable business. But I've been pulling rate cards for some other brands, and it's been very interesting to see. I'm seeing this huge spread also that there are a lot of people completely, I don't want to say overvaluing themselves, but asking for an amount of money that is just wildly outrageous for the amount of followers they have and for the amount of engagement they have. Then I have other people who will send me a rate card and they want to charge 150 rand for a YouTube video, and like it's not necessarily my job. Like I'm speaking on the brand's behalf, so I want the brand to obviously get the biggest bang for their buck. But like I've often turned around and emailed them and I'm saying like you really could increase your price to XYZ or triple it or do this, and I said just please like increase your prices and send it back to me, and then I'll pass it on to the brand. Just because like I don't want them to also feel like, for me, like you can't create a YouTube video for 150 rand. You just can't. Like your daughter to upload that video costs you more than 150 rand. Like you paid for a camera, you paid for lighting, it's your time. Like, and it is young, very young people getting into this who don't necessarily see the value for what they're doing, because that's just the cost of creating the content. That's not even what the brand is getting in terms of the mind of eyeballs seeing this, and also the brand often has the right then to use that content for their platforms also. And if the brand wanted to go and create that video and get a stylist, an art director, an editor, director, it will cost them like thousands, if not hundreds of thousands to make these kind of videos with a model. Like, and they're getting this authentic content. So I have just found there are just like still like these very big gaping holes within the industry, and there hasn't really been like really great management of influencers and like their rate cards and how they're charging, and then it hasn't necessarily also been really good management from brand and agency side. A lot of the time they're still asking for trade exchange way past the point where that's a good idea. And I just do hope that once brands, especially I think now after coronavirus and people have been shopping a lot more online, when you're shopping online, it's a lot easier to prove sales, especially when there are coupon codes and stuff and referral fees and links that you can track how many times someone clicked, and you can really then actually measure influence. Because I think for a long time people have not been really measuring the success of their campaigns and whether someone, because often people have beautiful content and they get thousands and thousands of likes and they get great engagement, and that often unfortunately has to do with it's not unfortunate, but the person is very aesthetically pleasing. Like they are just a very beautiful person, and that's what people are liking, not necessarily that the person is influencing them in any way to buy this detergent or this bag. They're just really good looking, so they have a lot of followers because people enjoy following people who are really good looking. But in terms of like measuring influence, do they sell? I don't think I think that still is kind of yet to be proven. And I think once the brand's starting to work out like who actually drives sales, like someone like Monera with the air fryer, like the fact that she's not sponsored to the hilt with air fryers like coming out of her ears is just insane. I mean, how many air fryers has that woman sold? Like through herself and then by other people who bought it saying, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever bought. How many more has sold because she started kind of that conversation?
But it is like so true. So, I mean, yeah, you can't really judge influence by like how many followers somebody has.
No.
Because, I mean, there's people with like almost over like 100,000 followers who don't have that same sort of, I mean, I've seen people that do like follow for follows and then have like,
Yeah.
like it's easy to get a lot of followers if you do it like that, or you buy
Yeah.
followers.
Buy followers, like I remember finding out about people buying followers and just being absolutely shocked. Like that never even crossed my mind that was something that it was possible to do. And yeah, I mean, I think you can see very easily now when someone has bought their followers. But it's and I think that's why this industry kind of needs more people who've worked on, and I've started seeing it, a lot of people who've worked on kind of the influencer side of things and have done it from their own perspective and are creative people starting to work at the agencies or with the agencies and really being able to craft really good briefs and really understanding like, oh, if we pay this person, like these are the results we're going to get, and this person really is actually influential.
Yeah.
Not someone who bought like 50,000 followers.
Yeah, no, exactly. Let's talk about Curiously Created. So why did you decide to start it, the newsletter?
Why did I? Because I get bored really easily. And I was in the midst of deciding to resign at my job. I felt that was coming along. And I always like to have something new and something going. I'm someone who just really loves starting things. I don't necessarily like finishing them or working on them continuously. I do enjoy starting new things, and it seemed like a good distraction. Oftentimes starting new things is a great form of procrastination for me. So it's like, oh, I should be doing this, but like, let me just start a newsletter. So I started the newsletter because I also had realized at the time that I had about the same amount of followers on Instagram and Twitter, but actually they were completely different groups of people. Like they almost, like there are a couple of people who follow me from Twitter who follow me on Instagram, and a couple of people who follow me on Instagram on Twitter also. But for the most part, people on Instagram were not seeing the content that I was sharing on Twitter. And I felt like the content I was sharing on Twitter was really the interesting things that I was reading. And I'm not someone who just wants to share just random stuff all the time. I do hope that if people follow me, they can read something engaging, or they can learn something, or that I can share a podcast episode that they'll really enjoy, or a recipe, or a new coffee place. I've always kind of wanted in that way to add value and not be someone who's like always hunting something or selling something. So I was like, well, let me just start the newsletter with all the stuff that I've been finding and sharing on Twitter and kind of see what happens. And I really thought that I would get, I don't know, like 150, maybe 200 subscribers. Like I really didn't think it was going to get to so many people so quickly. But the response has been really good. And like, it's just so great to see people. I think the open rate's like just over 50%. So people are really like opening it, and I can see they're clicking and they're reading. And like if a couple of people are finding really good information and sharing it on, it kind of makes me happy, because I mean, at the end of the day, it is a lot of work, but whether I shared that or not, like I'm still consuming that amount of content every week. I actually consume a lot more than that, because that's kind of like the curated version down. But it also, like, the great thing about it has been that it has also pushed me to read more, listen to more podcasts, find better content. Like when other people recommend something, I write it down and then I go back to it. And for me, it's been great because I've consumed amazing new things. And I think that's what's amazing about social media, is finding those kind of recommendations. And I think a lot of people who aren't on Twitter anymore, I find Instagram, there isn't a lot of substance beyond beautiful pictures, and beautiful pictures are great, but it's very hard to find any. I mean, I love reading and I love long reads, and that's obviously a long read does not work well on Instagram, and no one wants to read a caption and then it says like continued in comments. Like no one on Instagram is there for continued in comments, length essay captions. Like they want a line or two, like just say I'm ratchet, nasty, whatever, and like let's move. So I just thought, oh, this is like a different format. And I think what's also really cool about the email is that people can read it whenever they want. So
Yeah.
I send it on a Sunday. Sunday they're busy and they want to read it on a Monday or Tuesday. A lot of people will tell me they just like save it, and then throughout the week they'll go back and like read it, or they like need a new podcast, so they'll go through the old ones and find a new podcast. I just wanted to create it because I was like, well, I need to create something useful, and it was a distraction and fun. And the other thing that I was seeing at the time, and I'm sure that you know it from magazines, was when I started blogging and going to amazing events. Like if I went to an Estee Lauder event, it would be 40 people from magazines and newspaper and like proper journalists, and they really were asking questions about, the formula and when is this coming out. Like it was proper, it was like properly Nadia Femina, Fair Lady, Cosmo, Marie Claire. Like there were so many magazines. I gotta say, those people weren't necessarily always the nicest. And so you would have 40 people from journalists, from magazines and newspapers, and then you would have like 5, maybe 10 bloggers, influencers. And from going to events and seeing events online now, I mean, the magazine and print and journalism has been like absolutely destroyed in this country. Like it really doesn't exist. I mean, you have the Cape Times, you have the Argus, Daily Maverick, I think is brilliant. You have News 24. But I mean, what magazines still exist, or what amazing kind of curated, opinion driven platforms still exist? And I was just like, there aren't any. And I think that at a point, brands, as much as they want to work with people, they're going to want to work with platforms that are bigger than one person's opinion. So I am hoping to create something. I mean, currently it's just a newsletter, but something that's bigger than, because at the moment it's generally a lot of it is my opinion, or like, I know, it's what fascinates and interests me, and it's not even my own content, it's sharing other people's content that I think is amazing. But I think there's a space that is missing of people curating really interesting things, because our attention is so all over the place. And going on Instagram, it is hard to find that content. And even if you think about that, you saw someone posted a really amazing brownie recipe on Instagram, it's so hard to go back and find all content. You're like, oh, who posted it? And I didn't save it, and I didn't create a file called recipes. Like, how am I ever going to find that again? So I think it's just interesting how the internet has kind of changed and shifted, and some things have become much easier, like Netflix. You wanted to watch a series, and some things have become a lot more complicated. Like you used to be able to go and buy a magazine and read amazing articles and see amazing recommendations for books, and it was all in one place, and it only cost you 20-30 rands. And now to try get that curated down version where people have gone through all this content saying this is the best of the best, I feel like that just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, and even like the websites that were sort of like that are like going like heavy content on everything.
Yeah.
I started reading Bustle. I was looking at it a lot for work stuff. And it started out and it's great, and it was curated, great content for like, women in their 20s and probably more 20s, but like women, like young adults, and it was so great. But then they just started wanting to do everything. So like a TV show would come out and they will have an article on anything possible about that TV show. Like I didn't watch this Emily in Paris thing, but they'll be like, what happens after Emily goes to Paris? Where did she get that one hat? So like, it's very specifically SEO driven.
Yeah.
But
also, they just need the content. They need people clicking all the time so they can sell ads.
But it's like, if I want to go there and I want to read about Emily in Paris, I have to read 50 articles. Like, it's like it's just too much. Whereas I think
too much.
Like Hello Giggles back in the day was so great. They used to like I felt like every content piece was written for me in all their verticals, and it was just so well curated, but also changed, became so much more like obviously SEO. And I understand it, but also it's like you're right, there's no space where you can go to and feel like, I'm now going to sit down and this is content for me.
and everything's going to be good.
Exactly.
Like absolutely every piece of everything that you read, and it's the same for me. Like when I'm going and finding the content, like there are lots of, like I read the New York Times, I go to the Atlantic, I go Wired has amazing articles. There's a lot of shit on Wired. Like there's a lot of, I don't want to call them dumb articles, but not great articles. And like occasionally they do these articles, that these long reads that are just like mind blowing, like how good the journalism is and the reporting and the fact checking, and it's unbelievably good. But there's so much other stuff to wade through, and to an extent it also doesn't make any sense to me, because who is reading all these articles? These, like, I feel like there's so much filler and like so much fluff, and it's like, if someone actually had to sit and think about it, like, unless you clicked it by mistake and it was clickbait and it had a really good title, like, legitimately no one wants to read this. So you're paying someone to write this content, upload this content, find a nice cover image for it, and then to tweet it, Facebook it, all of these things. But it's not adding value in any way to anyone.
Exactly. I subscribe to a lot of sites RSS feeds just so that I can, don't miss out. But, but like I have it in like an I know Reader or whatever app. And it's just like, I'm so grateful for the mark as read, because sometimes I want to be like brave, and I'm like, I'm going to go through all the articles and just like, just read the titles and see if there's anything. I can never make it through, because
never. It's too much.
It is too much. And especially if you're like interested in a lot of things, like you can't, there's no way to kind of properly find your home. And yeah, you're right. Basically, what I'm saying with all my ranting is you're right.
So I think, so the one thing that I have found, the way that I'm finding most of my amazing content these days is Twitter, which is why I will never delete it. But I've really curated, for me, I feel like the most amazing feed. Like I follow the most interesting, diverse group of people. Most of them are not from South Africa. Like I know there are a lot of people who use it as like a networking fun thing, and that is fun to see. But like reporters from the New York Times, like stationed in Lebanon, and like this person from CNN, and this person from Wired, and this person from BuzzFeed News, and these people who work in venture capital in Silicon Valley, and this person, and it's like, I'm just like, I find like the amazing content they share that like I don't have to go and curate it, and then I just sit and I heart everything, and then I go back like once or twice a week and I like go through all those articles, open them, read through them, and it's like, it's such a pleasure that it's like they're creating this because they're so smart and they're so well read, and this is the best thing that they've read, and they're sharing it, and I'm finding this amazing content. But I have found that like most people do not get Twitter. Most of my friends are not on Twitter. They don't get it, and when they've ever tried it, they're like, I don't understand what's going on.
I think it's like an acquired knowledge, though. It's like something that you have to do for a little bit before you can.
Which is why like there's so many brands who like have been approaching me and wanting to do Twitter lately, and I'm like, I don't think you understand what you're trying to get yourself in for. Like, just like I don't know what your budget is, but I don't think that you can afford this.
Like, oh, I can't even imagine. I'm like. You have to be so creative to be able to make it on Twitter as a brand.
That, but I also think I think that Twitter is the easiest place to make it now. So in South Africa, just in terms of like, I think brands got so shit scared of Twitter and how badly it can go that basically all of them got off of it, besides answering customer complaints. So like Virgin Active, Telkom, F&B will reply when you're like, this is the worst service I ever got in my life. They'll be like, we're so sorry, we're in a DM. But like, I have not seen any South African brands. I mean, maybe Nando's is still doing it, or Chicken Licken, and always does a great job. But I'm not seeing any South African brands really do anything on Twitter. And I think to actually use it, not necessarily as you tweeting, but to find the influential people in their spheres in Twitter, and almost like back in the day where a brand would send a PR, like a press release to influencers, and literally like build a relationship with these like really influential people on Twitter, because there's some people who have like 20, 30, 40,000 followers, and like it gets retweeted and shared, and insane reach that you can get. And I think you can get much better reach than Instagram, which is no way. Like, you can share it to stories, but you'll never get that volume.
Yeah.
Like you get on Twitter when like a tweet really blows up. When the tweet blows up, like you're being seen. And I think creating those relationships with those like quite influential people, and whether they want to have a joke about something or whether they're sharing your link, but like in a clever way, I think there's something like amazing that could be done there.
I think Netflix South Africa does quite well on Twitter, because it might just be what I see, because obviously I follow a lot of entertainment-based things, but my
sister's friend used to do some of the Netflix South Africa. I don't know if he still does it, but he's so funny. And whenever I would see the tweets, I was like, I bet you that's that person. They're so good.
Yeah, it's like, I enjoy it, and they get constant engagement, because I mean, I hardly ever engage with brands on Twitter, but I will play their games. I will make a comment on something they say, because it's done so like smartly, or it's done in a way that
relevant. It's like it feels relevant, it feels local, it feels like the person is an actual tweeter who's tweeting you. It doesn't feel like they went to an ad agency and they were like, this is what we want to say, and like we can only have 280 characters, so we're going to break it down into 4 steps, and here's your thing. It's like people who really getting Twitter are using it, and like that's like such an acquired skill set. So they're like hired very well.
No, definitely. So what else have you been watching lately?
What else have I been watching? I started The Sopranos for the second time in March. I should say in stage 5, and I am now on season 6 again. I think it's like it's the most brilliant show, but I found it heavy the first time, and it's even heavier this time. So I'm taking and the episodes are an hour, and it's just unbelievable. But it's not a show I've ever been able to binge. So I've been really enjoying watching that again. And then I watched The Americans. I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't seen it. I've been meaning to. Like for the longest time.
I love the premise of it. Like the premise is genius. It's basically these Russian spies living in America as Americans during the Cold War. And it's so nice because there are no cell phones. It's literally, they use a landline, a fax machine. They dress like the cars are very the 80s. And I feel like there's not a lot of shows and stuff that are based in the 80s, because it's probably like too close to our time. Like lots of stuff from the 70s and 60s, but the 80s are different. And it's like I watched the first season probably like 2 or 3 times, like ages ago, and I just never got into it. And then I really wanted something that was substantial but also entertaining. And I started watching it again, and then I just like went on these binges, and I think they're like 6 seasons, and I went through it pretty fast, and it was excellent. The ending, you can see the people who put it together like really crafted it. Like it's so well thought out, from the music, and the disguises are so good.
So that's like Kerry Russell and
Matthew Rice, I think. Is it Rice? Reese? Do you know they got married in real life?
Did they get married?
Yeah, they got married in real life. And when you watch, there's also, I got to say, there's a lot of nudity and there's a lot of sex. This is not a PG-13 show. And when you watch, you're like, oh, these people are married. They're very happily married.
Oh, no, I love that. So what other documentaries do you recommend? Because I know you said you're not a big fan of them anymore, but, well, the biased ones. But which ones have you enjoyed?
I mean, when I say the biased ones, like those ones that like really light a fire under you, and you're like, I'm going vegan tomorrow. It's like, wow, just like, and I'm like, what else have I watched? I watched The Last Dance with the Michael Jordan think that was like a 10 parts. I thought that was excellent. I mean, I think they definitely were very nice to him. I think he is a little bit more of an asshole than they necessarily make out. Like, I do think that he did come across, obviously, as arrogant and all of those things, but he was also the greatest player. And there was also like a lot of history in it. I mean, I never, obviously, we're South African, we don't have basketball or whatever, but like I didn't know the history with his father and his father being murdered, and that was just so crazy to me. And just his friendship with Scottie Pippen, and I really liked how Dennis Rodman and like how the other people on the team also were spotlighted. Like, it wasn't just about him. And I gotta say, I was so inspired afterwards. Like, all I really wanted to do was go and buy a basketball, and I was like, "Where is the hoop?" Like, I want to play basketball. And then I also watched you have to watch it if you haven't seen it. It's called A Secret Love. It's a Ryan Murphy produced documentary on Netflix. It's about a lesbian couple who I think are in their 70s or 80s, and they've been together like 40, 50 years, and for most of the time they're not married, and for most of the time it's been in secret, and their family thought, or under the impression, I guess, that they were friends who lived together. And oh my god, you will cry. It's about love and getting older, and the one isn't so mobile anymore, and those kind of choices you have to make when you reach a certain age where you can't necessarily live in the place that you want to live. And also, like, I mean, imagine coming out at like 80 or something. It is the most beautiful, heartbreaking, wonderful documentary. Definitely watch that one. And then I also watched The Octopus Teacher, which I think everyone in South Africa has watched now.
I haven't seen it.
Watched it.
I know I'm going to, but
it is beautiful. But like there's something a bit weird about it also. like he starts off saying like he was inspired to make this film about this octopus because he, at some point, I don't know if he went to work with the San or the Bushman or like what the situation was, but that's like what drove him to be in nature. But it's just so weird because the San never like befriended an antelope. Like they were very much in nature and tracking it, and they were hunting to kill because that's how they lived, and they were part of nature. They weren't necessarily trying to become friends with nature and the antelope, but I think they very much understand and understood their part in the whole ecosystem on life and wildlife. And I think like sometimes white people, us Caucasians, like we want to just be, it's just, I don't know if they necessarily understanding being at one with nature doesn't necessarily have to become friends with an octopus. It's just a bit weird in that way. And I also wasn't like, I'm not convinced that it was one octopus the entire time, because when you see how that octopus changes colors and shapes and whatever, I'm like, you cannot tell me that like the whole time that was one octopus. Like, there could have been like 40 octopuses down there. Like, how do you know it was always the same one? Like, I just don't get it. But you should definitely watch it and tell me your opinion.
I will definitely. I was talking to another guest about like how Netflix has kind of made it cool to watch documentaries, because I never watched animal documentaries, not animals, not plants, like I hardly ever.
Not plants.
You know, because I really
never seen a plant documentary.
I watched like I don't know. I mean,
Chasing Carl.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I've seen that one.
I was like, bio was my second worst subject at school. Let me not expose myself. No, I watched that and I was bawling for that movie. And I'm like, this is not something I would watch ever. But because Netflix kind of like promotes it to you, but I also feel like it's good. Like, even though it's not something that algorithm-wise I would watch, the fact that they promoted it, I'm like, oh, let me just try it out. And it was amazing. And the same thing is like, so many people are talking about this octopus thing. I'm going to end up watching it. I know myself. And
I think what's nice about a documentary is like, it's generally entertaining, but you also learn something.
Yeah.
like a movie is just pure entertainment generally, where a documentary, like you really can like generally like they're beautiful, and you also are just learning. I mean that coral one, the Chasing Coral, like really shocked me. Like I really didn't know it was that bad. I don't know if you watched a documentary called Blackfish about the killer whales at SeaWorld. I mean, I've always loved documentaries, and I always seek out documentaries. I mean, I don't know if you watch also the Amy Winehouse one.
Yes,
but like
love
documentaries,
that.
like they make me feel a type of way. Like they really do. I mean, also I don't know if you watched the Ava 113.
Yes.
I mean, it's just like you never would have, like, it's so much easier. It's so much easier to consume it in a documentary when it's been edited like that. Then, like, it's very hard to get people to read books about these kind of things.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, we have podcasts now, and I think the podcast format is amazing. But I think documentaries, you really can tell such a powerful story in a very short amount of time.
Yeah. Because I really love like documentaries about people.
Yeah.
Like if they tell people's lives or whatever. And
I love documentaries about people and also cults. I love cults. I'm obsessed with cults.
like a new one now. The Vow. Okay.
What's The Vow?
I think I've been hearing I think it's about a sex cult. I think it's like currently airing in the US, so people are talking about it a lot. The Vow documentary. Oh, so I watched this
it's about. I know who it's about. I've read so much.
I watched the thing on Showmax. Have you seen they had like a Showmax?
I haven't.
They had like a show, but it's just made by them, so it was like very much from their perspective.
Oh my god! Yeah. Do you follow Hannah Bronfman on Instagram?
No.
So she's like this huge influencer in America, and her family is one of like the wealthiest families from Canadian money. And like I think it's like her step-aunts are like two of the women who gave this guy, like, I think it was like $65 million or something. And that's why they were like, could continue going for such a long time. And she's like this really cool influencer that everyone follows. And I was like, literally this cult is like so close to like, I've listened to some podcasts about it, and it's truly crazy.
Even from his perspective, it seemed crazy, man. Like, I couldn't.
It always seem crazy. Like that's kind of why I find them fascinating. It's just how people get into them, and obviously from the outset, it never seems that crazy. Else people wouldn't join. I sometimes feel like it doesn't seem that crazy, but the person was always like a narcissist or a psychopath or whatever the situation was, and then they like, as they get more and more power, they just get more and more power hungry. Like I'm listening to this other podcast called Short Creek, and it's about, I've just gone blank on what his name is, but I think they're like the fundamentalist Mormons. And it is just absolutely wild, this podcast about like what they believed in. And then this guy came to power, and he was just so much more strict than any of them had ever been before. And it turns out he was also, I think, marrying and sleeping with 14-year-olds. And he eventually got arrested. But a lot of the people in the community thought he was framed because in the past they had not really gotten along with law enforcement, and they still believed him. And it's just, and while other people are like, no, he broke my family up, he tore us apart. And it's like, how does this, they've always been this small religious group, like how do they come back together when they can't even agree on if this guy was good or bad?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna listen to that.
It's really good.
But it's so interesting the way people's minds work. Like with all of these, I listened to a podcast on Manson. It was so interesting, like how in depth they went, and I was like, this guy really, like for me, I just can't. Like, you know, some of them are like highly educated, have a lot of money, and you can kind of see it. But Manson, I was like, he's just a mess of a human. But it was so interesting how he got this group together of people that were like on the fringes.
You have to read a book. I read it last year. It's called Chaos, and I just googled it to get the full name. It's called Chaos: Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s. I read it last year, and it's like not a complete book in that like he doesn't really necessarily come to like definitive answers of this is 100% what happened, but they basically think that he may have been involved in like mind control with the CIA and the CIA doctor and psychologist who
Oh wow.
he like they were all Charles Manson and this very famous psychologist were like basically at one point based in the same building. And because no one has ever been able to figure out how this very uncharismatic man who was, I mean, he was really short, he wasn't necessarily good looking, like why did these people absolutely flock to him? He wasn't extremely well educated, and not only did they like believe in him and all want to sleep with him, but like the fact that he could get like 18, 19-year-old girls to literally stab someone like 70 whatever times, like, and they appeared to be normal, and they like, how did that happen? Like, how did he control? Like, he wasn't even there. Like, he wasn't even, and they didn't have cell phones. He wasn't phoning them and telling them to do it. Like, they literally went on their own, seemingly on their own accord, and did it. And it's a very fascinating book, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, okay. I've written it down. Definitely gonna check that out. So, okay, wait, I have to wrap up. What would you say is your all-time favorite series?
All-time favorite, Sopranos and The Wire.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever watched The Wire.
No.
Oh, it's genius. It is so long. But basically every season, it's basically about drugs and poverty and kind of the vicious cycle of drugs and poverty, and why people who are stuck in that are not able to necessarily get out of it. And each season focuses on a different segment of it, so you're always following the same characters, but one season will focus heavily on the police, another season will focus heavily on the docks and like where the drugs are coming in, and another season will focus very heavily on schools and education, and then another season will focus very much on like the young up and coming drug dealers, and then the kind of drug dealers who graduate and are running the other younger ones, and like the poverty, and like, and it's genius how he put it together from all these different people's perspective, and it's just the corruption and everything that goes involved in who's making money and who's not making money, and the whole thing with the war on drugs and how much people who were taking crack or heroin at the time were seen as these complete failures of society, where I think now when you look at America and you see like the opioid huge problem, I feel like they don't treat those kind of people the same as they treat someone who was like taking crack on the street. And I think they very much now are like, oh, well, that person is addicted and they got it from their doctor, and they see it from a different point of view. But at the end of the day, it's all drugs, and people are addicted to it, and the cycles of poverty that keep people selling drugs, buying drugs, and not being able to leave that environment, and how it's pretty much in part like the police can keep taking down like individual drug dealers here or there, but they're never going to topple a system where there's such huge demand for it. And also in terms of supply, people want to sell it because they can make more money than they'll ever make, working at a restaurant or working anywhere else. And then also the sense of power that you get, and it's just, and the corruption is, it's excellent. I highly recommend The Wire.
Have you seen The Deuce? I think it's made by the same people.
Why does that sound so familiar? I don't think I have.
But it's probably not as good, but it's also like, well, it's about the porn industry. And
is it about Times Square and stuff?
Yes.
I haven't watched it, but I've been meaning to watch it.
Like, I don't know the reception to it, but I loved it. Like, I thought it was brilliant.
Okay, you need to watch another book recommendation that I have to give you not to watch. It's called Thy Neighbor's Wife, and it came out in the early 80s, and it was an absolute scandal when it came out. But it basically explores like sexuality in America, and like literally from the like advent of like nudie magazines to porn, and how it was outlawed, and how Hugh Hefner started Playboy, how much money he was making, and it kind of works up to a kind of free love society in the 70s, and swinging and non-monogamy and all of these things. And I read it last year, and it's such a good book in terms of the history of like all of like what was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, no, it was so interesting. Like, and they also talk about the police. They talk about politicians. Like, there's like an aspect on that, because and it has a lot of the same actors as The Wire as well, I think. And then you do
then I
cross
must
it
definitely watch
the brothels. They going into like porn, how porn was created. They talk about the HIV crisis, and because it goes like 70s and 80s, and excellent. Even though it has James Franco, excellent.
Even though it has James Franco,
and he plays twins, but like I swear one twin is like hotter than the other one, and I don't understand it, because I don't even find James Franco that hot. But like,
I am so confused by that, because the only person who's played twins successfully, I'm sorry, is Lindsay Lohan in The Parent Trap. No one else has done a good job of that. Mary-Kate and Ashley.
They are actual twins.
I know. They didn't have to try too hard. I just remember watching The Parent Trap as a kid and being like, she's the greatest actress of all time.
I think it took me like a minute before I realized that there was one person.
So, I mean, why, as a director, why would you go to so much trouble just to find twins? Like, the fact that they were like so obsessed with her, they were like, we're going to reshoot this entire thing twice. What an effort.
It is quite wild. Like, I'm
CGI, that was must have been involved.
And actually not the same age as her. I feel like they are. Like, they could have just used them. But they did do like a lot of movies, so maybe they wanted something different.
Shame they weren't the greatest actresses.
But they made bank. They made bank with those home movies.
I don't know if you ever watched. They had one called It Takes Two, which was one of my. That was like their best movie by far. I mean, it was basically an album of The Parent Trap. Oh, I was obsessed with that movie. But like everything they did after that, and like when they went to like Rome and Paris, like it was all really cute, but it wasn't. But I actually kind of find it so fascinating when I look at like the young influencers today. Like you look at like Charlie D'Amelio and her sister, and like Addison Rae, and like but they basically trying to recreate in a way like that Olsen twin franchise. And then after the Olsen twins, and like how they had Miley Cyrus for Disney, like how much fucking money Miley Cyrus must have made for Disney as Hannah Montana and the Jonas Brothers. Like, and what I think is so cool now is that people aren't giving up their name and like licensing their face to Disney, and Disney's making like $5 billion off it. Like that they really like owning their own platform and products, and at least that they can own. I mean, because the Olsen twins, it was genius what they did. Like they were so ahead of their time on everything.
They were, because I mean, like with those little movies, they just made money, and then they had so many different products. They had books. They had like
they did CDs even, and then they
had cosmetics.
And they had cosmetics, and they had things that had their like own clothing line from Walmart. Yeah, I think it's so amazing how they were able to take that enormous success, enormous fortune that they made, and like seemingly become well-adjusted adults who have the most amazing fashion line and are taken quite seriously for what they do, and produce beautiful clothes. And it's like, I mean, that's generally not the end of the child star story. To become like, and like, I mean, they're still famous, but they're not followed and hounded. Like, it seems like they get to live like a nice life.
And they're famous, like sort of, it feels like they are famous on their own, what is the word I'm looking for? Like, they are famous.
On their own terms almost.
Yeah, on their own terms. Yeah. So like, they allow, I mean, they're so God, we don't know anything about them other than what their sister, the actress, like reveals.
Like, the other thing we didn't talk about is how did you watch the Paris documentary?
I did not.
On YouTube.
I have not watched that. I just saw the clip where she talks like with a normal voice, and I was like, what? I love The Simple Life. So
I think like the level to which you need to watch it is just like, I watched it thinking, oh, like this is a joke. I'm gonna watch 5 minutes, and like I cannot sit through a documentary that's so self-indulgent about Paris Hilton and her life. And it turned out to be something completely different from. I was not expecting any of the twists and turns that happened in that documentary on any level. And I think what's good about it is that I think so many people who watch it will see through not necessarily the trauma that happened to her, but the facade of fame and people thinking like she's made it because she's rich and she's skinny and she's beautiful and she has from the outside it looks like she has absolutely everything she could ever want. And then when you take a hard long look at it, like she doesn't have any of the things that she wants. Yeah. She has the money and she has the looks and she has the fame, but when it comes to relationships and trusting people and those things that keep you warm at night are things that she struggles with.
Okay, I'm gonna watch that. I've written all of the stuff you said down, even though I'm gonna listen to this again. I still wrote it and like don't forget. But
I've written down the juices in big.
Without the S, the juice.
The juice, okay, the juice, not the juices. Just a juice.
But just look for show with James Franco playing twins. That's Maggie Gyllenhaal. And
is Maggie Gyllenhaal in it?
She's actually like a producer and stuff on it as well.
I love her.
Yeah, no, she's excellent
so
in it. Like, but yeah, it's a really good show. But thank you so much for being on the podcast. Like, I really, really appreciate this.
Thank you so much. I had such a fun time chatting to you.
Yeah, me too. This was really great. I was very nervous, but this was good.
I can't believe what the time is.
Yeah, I was like,
I just looked at the time. Wow, okay, this is the world's longest podcast.
That was our interview with Talya. You can find her at Talya Goldberg on Twitter and Instagram. You can sign up for her weekly newsletter, Curiously Curated, at curiouslycurated.co.za. But before we head out, as always, what have you been crushing on this week, Rebecca?
So this week I haven't watched much, but I've been watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine as like a way of keeping me company while I was doing other things, just because I was quite busy. But it's still, for me, it's still such a good show. And it's well written, it's funny, witty, and stupid at the same time. Who do you like the best?
I actually think Holt is my favorite.
Yeah, I thought so. I think, yeah, because he's just like, huh?
Who's your favorite?
I think I like Terry. Just because he's such a softie, which I guess we got used to him in Malcolm in the Middle as the father.
Oh, you mean everybody hates Chris?
Everybody hates Chris, yeah, that's it.
I was like, okay, this is like, Malcolm in the Middle to one.
Yeah, but I mean, you know what I mean. And making my way downtown, White Chicks. And in that time, he hasn't aged either. At least in my mind, he looks exactly the same way he did 20 years ago. Did you see that
episode where Amy, I don't know if she thought she was pregnant or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
And she and Rosa kept like whispering to each other, and Teddy thought that they were making fun of him, like his daughters make fun of him.
Like Cagney and Lacey make fun of him. I haven't watched that episode again. This is only the second time, but oh my word, I can imagine. Was he quite sensitive to it?
Yes, it's the first episode of season 7.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. I'm only on season 2 now. For the second time. What about you?
Like, I don't know, I've just been in like the mood for some like light comedies. So I watched Seriously Single on Netflix. It's an African movie, a rom-com. And like I quite enjoyed it. Like the main character annoyed me so much, I was ready to strangle her. But like the best friend, Noni, was the funniest. Like to me Morocco plays her, but like I was laughing so much. Like I feel like if I didn't laugh for her, I would have hated the movie. Yeah. But then I was invested in her, like side plot or so. Like I wish she was the main character. But I enjoyed that. And I also watched Little on Showmax, which got that little girl from Blackish. And like
okay.
Issa Rae. And
Yeah.
like it's like this lady, this little girl puts a curse on her, and she turns into herself as like a 10-year-old. But she's like this
Whoa.
high executive person. And now
As
she's
a 10-year-old. Oh, that would be weird.
And like I really like Regina Hall. You remember her from Scary Movie?
yeah.
I really like her, and she plays the older version. So yeah, it was okay. But it was like a good laugh, a good like stress reliever type thing. So
Yeah.
but yeah, that's all from us. You can find me at Karen Walby on Instagram and at Karen Walby's with an S on Twitter. Sign up for my newsletter, Wildest Dreams, at wildestdreams.substack.com. The podcast can be found at Crushing on Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find more information about this and all our other episodes at our website, crushingonpodcast.com, and send any feedback to crushingonpod@gmail.com. Join our Facebook group, Crushing On Club, where we chat about the show, celebrity news, recommendations, the whole shebang. Let us know what you think about what was discussed in this week's episode by sending us a voice note or email to crushingonpod@gmail.com. The show is produced by me, Karen, and Rebecca Barches. The show is edited and engineered by Rebecca Barches. Our logo was designed by Nathifa Maroof. And the show was created in partnership with IGN Africa. If you like the show, tell everyone that you can, any way that you can. Keep up to date with all our episodes by subscribing to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please rate and review the episodes on Apple Podcasts, as it helps others find the show. We'll be back next week with another in-depth conversation with a pop culture lover. See you then!